What's going on, you guys? It is Dollar Cost Crypto here with Jason Hartman, man. What's going on, dude?
Hey, Miguel.
Yeah,
Been out in the studio here.
Yeah, man. I'm glad I got to catch you on here, man. We just met the other day, and shout out to Rolo Tomasi for putting us together and stuff. But yeah, man, what do you think?
He's a connector, Rolo. Yeah, it's good to be here, and looking forward to diving into some deep topics on money and economics and
right.
Fiscal policy, monetary policy, wherever you want to take it.
No,
astronaut.
No, I mean, that's right. So, I guess I just want to give a little recap from yesterday and stuff. So, shout out to Michael Sartami. It's his birthday. That was a lot of fun and stuff like that. And we got a lot more planned and everything.
Yeah, but the ratio of girls to guys just wasn't acceptable.
Right.
There were only like 10 girls for every guy. We need at least 12.
I personally wasn't very happy with that, but it just is what it is. You got to work with who you can.
Yeah.
But no, definitely. No, thank you for coming on the show. So, I mean, on here, we always talk about crypto. We usually go crypto macro, and as well as one big part of the podcast I've been trying to talk a little bit more about has been real estate, just because we have the increasing interest rates going on right now. This is like the classic story I was saying a while back. You could get like a $500,000 house with like good credit for basically with a $2,400 payment, right?
Yeah.
For the average person. And now with all these rate increases, the same person, in order to keep that same $2,400 payment, has to get now like a $325,000 property. That's how much purchasing power that the usual consumer has gotten. But as well as what's going on right now is that the real estate prices haven't crashed that much, really.
Yeah.
So it's like people really can't buy that much of a house. So people who locked in that rate are right now feeling like they're sitting on cash right now.
Yeah, no, it's, the question I always talk about on my podcast and my YouTube channel is, I think life's most important question, Miguel.
Yeah.
And here it is. Compared to what?
Right.
Compared to what is life's most important question? And I get that comparison. Everybody's making the same comparison you are. But here's the thing. What we had during the COVID era was a total anomaly. That we saw the lowest interest rates literally in 5,000 years.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, they actually track interest rates back that far. great book. You probably read it or know about it at least, by the late David Graeber, called Debt: The First 5,000 Years. Fascinating. Right. And yeah, they track interest rates back 5,000 years, believe it or not. And so we had the lowest interest rates in 5,000 years. But when you just compare it to a longer time in history, and you compare to the last 10 years, the last 15 years, you see that the rates aren't really that high today. But I get it. I understand.
It's all relative.
The people that got in on that were just super lucky, and it's a life-changing event. Yeah. What happened. And now they've got those mortgages. Do you know that 24% of all the mortgages in the country have rates below 3%?
Beautiful.
That is shocking. And 40% of all the mortgages in the country are paid off, or homes have no mortgages. So those people are not desperate sellers.
Right.
They're not going to be motivated to sell. In fact, the people with those sub 3% mortgages are going to be vastly, heavily incentivized to keep those houses because they don't want to let go of that mortgage that is now an asset.
Yes.
Most people think the house is the asset and the mortgage is the liability. But when you have a mortgage below 3%, that's a huge asset.
That's an asset. Yeah. So shout out to anyone who got to lock that in. I think you were able to lock that in pretty much for the last year and a half, basically. Yeah.
It was amazing. Incredible.
Definitely. And this is why I wanted to bring you on. I mean, you're a real estate mogul. I mean, obviously, your bio's in the description box below. But I wanted to jump into all these kind of topics because obviously we're the crypto show. I can run circles around most people when I'm talking about crypto and things. But at the same time, so we were talking about this yesterday, right, at lunch, when we were saying that I was telling you a lot of people in crypto kind of want to get into real estate at some point because they want that stability, right? We're in a very unstable assets. The reason we can get these big giant returns is because we are basically married to volatility. Yeah. Extremely married to volatility. This is a very, very bad BPD chick. This is a very, very crazy lady we're married to in crypto. No, she's hot and she's cold. She's yes and she's no.
She's in and she's out. She's up and she's down. Yeah, that's definitely true. Now, crypto is extremely volatile. It's a teenager. Yeah. I mean, Bitcoin's a teenager. It's about 13 years old, and it acts like a teenager. Very unreliable.
Right. I mean, you were giving her way much more credit. I was saying she's 11 or he's 10 and shit. Yeah. But it's just a sort of thing, right now, I think, what changed probably from like 2017. So 2017 was the last time we had like a really big run, right, in crypto. That was that was the $20,000 run for BTC, and we had all these asset runs. And that when we crashed, it wasn't really like spurred on by like a macro event in the regular stock market or anything. It was just like our own, we crashed. Right. That was normal. This one was, we were taking, honestly, pretty much mostly everybody, even including myself. I mean, everybody was basically feeling like we were going to hit about 100,000 plus before we would be like, okay, now it's like...
Come on, man. Michael Saylor told me $1 million.
Well, Michael Saylor... But I could... There's no dig on Michael Saylor, but like... me and Charlie, always, my business partner from Cultivate Crypto, we always say that, Michael Saylor's still got furniture to sell for Bitcoin because he's just, fully levered out, sells... I mean, every time they get any cash, they just buy Bitcoin and stuff like that. And at least now they're lowering their cost average, but... yeah, they're pretty wild over there. I think one day we will hit $1 million. I hope
you're right.
I truly believe that on Bitcoin, but it's not going to happen overnight. Yeah. Absolutely not. No. I mean, it could take a decade for it to happen, but I do believe it could happen.
We will see. But the question at that point is, did Bitcoin go up or did the dollar go down? Right. And how much was the dollar debased? Right. So maybe the real dollar versus nominal dollar, right? It's still nominal. It's called $1 million, right? But the value of it might only be 100,000,
right?
At that point, so
in purchasing power, which you can get, And where do you count that from? Like what year, more or less in terms of like where do you because obviously like a lot of the some people track it for when I would say the Federal Reserve came over in 1913. That our dollar was worth this, and then now it's worth 99% down, basically. Yeah. So I mean, and then so I've also heard other people say like, we the 1970s dollar, because that's when, like
1971 when Nixon took us off the gold standard.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good time to look at it, but it all depends. I mean, look at it, it's a moving target, and every year the dollar loses value. Right now, officially, we're losing value at about 9% annually, but in real terms, if you calculate inflation the way they used to calculate it, or anybody knows that it's a lot worse than 9%.
Right.
If you're a practical person, and I say the real inflation rate's about 15 to 17% right now.
We're in complete agreement. I say that I usually say, I just whatever the CPI number, I just double it.
Yeah,
that's
right.
And
the consumer price index is a scam.
Yeah,
it's hugely manipulated. There are three major ways. First of all, let's understand the incentives, right? So when we had that really bad inflation in the late 1970s and early 80s, they started manipulating the consumer price index, the most widely used measure of inflation, very heavily. And they do it in three major ways. Well, first, the incentives and the reason to do it, and then I'll go into the three ways.
Of course.
One incentive is, of course, they want to keep the voters happy. Because when the voters aren't happy, the politicians don't remain in power.
Right.
Okay? And so they lose their jobs, and they want to stay in power, obviously. But the other thing is, the government payroll is about 20% of the economy. That's a huge number. Okay.
Well, I had no idea it was that high.
Oh, it's giant. I mean, think of
Wow.
how many government employees there are at the federal, state, and local levels, right? And so all of these government employees, their salaries are indexed to the consumer price index. They get COLA, cost of living adjustments, right? And so if the CPI is high and it were to be accurate and they were to say, okay, inflation is 15 to 17%, that's the kind of raises they would have to give people. And so that would be unaffordable for government.
Right.
Now, the other thing is all of the government benefits, Social Security, disability, whatever, all
Medicaid,
of the welfare state,
Yeah.
right? And Social Security isn't exactly the welfare state, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
And all of that is indexed to inflation. So the government would have a very expensive problem if they told the truth about inflation. So how do they manipulate it? How do they not tell the truth? And by the way, this might be a repeat. I'm sure you talk about this with your listeners, so it's probably nothing.
No.
Just briefly, three major ways: weighting, substitution, and hedonic indexing. So you look at the CPI, it's this basket of goods, and certain items in the consumer price index are weighted differently. Right. So, the cost of housing is one weight category. The cost of other products and groceries and energy are other categories. And by the way, I'll talk about the core rate or core inflation in just a moment, because that also is another scam. So they'll weight items differently, right? And then they do substitution. So they'll say, well, if the price of beef goes up, they assume everyone will just switch to chicken. But maybe you don't like chicken. You think chicken's a dirty bird, right? So you don't want to eat chicken.
It's all about that
beef. Yeah, you want steak, right? Or burgers. And so they'll substitute things, right? But then hedonic indexing, and this is the really misleading one, because they can play a lot of games with this one. So, this phone, right, this iPhone, costs $1,500.
Yep.
Okay? My first cell phone weighed 14 pounds and cost $3,200.
Yes.
Okay. And this phone is clearly better than my first phone.
Right.
But what they'll do is they'll assume that because the phone got so much better and because technology improved, they'll assume that we actually paid less for that item than we really did.
Right.
And what that says, it's logical on its face, hedonic indexing. That's a hedonic adjustment. The root word being hedonism, pleasure seeking. How much pleasure do we get out of that phone versus the old phone, right? Clearly the new one is better because technology improves. But the problem with it is that with hedonic indexing, it basically says we as people aren't entitled to inflation or to progress. Right? The consumer price index gets progress. We don't get progress. So imagine if they hedonically indexed everything from, say, when Edison invented the light bulb.
Right.
I mean, everything would be free.
Right.
But it's not free. We still have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And so hedonic indexing is another big one.
It's very I have not heard of hedonic indexing and
Yeah.
stuff, but that is it comes from hedonism.
Yeah. It's hedonic adjustment. And, that's another thing also in psychology. There's an interesting thing that we all do as humans called hedonic adaptation. And so our expectations keep rising for our own pleasure as things get more pleasurable. We have to have a higher level of pleasure.
Chasing the dragon.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I like that.
Yeah, just chasing the dragon, or like
which also is the nature of addictions.
Right.
We could go down a lot of rabbit holes here, but
I mean, me and Rolo were literally talking about that yesterday. About like that's one of the reasons why we are the apex species, is because we kind of chase the dragon in a way and everything. Now there is in terms of genetics a little bit of a problem with that, because it ends up making us like the apex species, because we always try to get better and keep increasing technology and then doing this and that. But then there's some people who take that biologically into drugs and then go down, they spiral out basically.
Right. It's the nature of any addiction, whether it be drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever. Compulsive behaviors of any type.
And let's even talk about this, like the addiction of like clout. Right, addiction of being famous and stuff with like you saw last night. I mean, we were having fun and stuff, but you saw. I mean, you were talking about this earlier, where like the girls were all on their phones.
Oh my God,
it's
a disaster.
Yeah.
Well, so for those who don't know, we were out clubbing last night, a whole bunch of us, and it is shocking. I mean, social media has just ruined the world. It is, it's unbelievable, and this is more Rolo's category than mine, of course, but I just can't believe like. There's how many people were in that nightclub last night? 2,000 people
plus,
maybe. Yeah, it was huge nightclub, right? And the guys do it, but the girls do it more. Yeah. Okay, because there's a higher level of narcissism in women than men, right? And so and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. We all have a little narcissism.
Yeah,
right?
of course. You need it too.
Yeah. Well, it makes progress. I mean, that's fine. But they're just there on their phones, taking pictures of themselves all night. We're here we're having an experience.
Right.
What's the point of being here? It's all to photograph it and record it to stick it on Instagram.
To make people feel
that's bad. Not living.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And then you take that to the next logical problem, is this amount of validation that comes from that can never be satisfied, because no normal boyfriend or guy next door can satisfy that level of validation that woman now needs.
Right.
Because she gets it on social media. She goes and posts that video or that picture, and there's 79 likes or 79,000 likes, depending on how big a following she has, right?
Yeah.
So no real person can satisfy her anymore.
Right, because then she has like 1 billion beta orbiters basically giving her likes and saying, "Hey, this and this." Yeah. But shout out to Hex Monkey with the $50 super chat.
Wow!
If they computed inflation using the formula from the 1980s, we are between 20 to 30%. By the way, great to see Jason on here. Met him in Rebel Capitalist. He's an awesome, smart guy.
Yeah. Hey, thank you.
Hey, shout out to Hex Monkey. Baby.
I was going to ask Hex Monkey for half of the super chat money, but with a compliment, you keep the money. Yeah, thanks, Hex Monkey.
No, shout out to Hex Monkey, man. I mean, wait, you're a Hex again. You own Hex.
Yeah, Gary got me to buy a little bit of it, and I'm waiting to be a zillionaire, but so far it hasn't happened.
But I wanted to ask you. It's like there's so many ways we can take this conversation. It's so amazing, but. But thank you so much for the information in terms of how they calculate inflation.
Yeah.
But
so Hex Monkey is probably referring to the website shadowstats.com, which is a great resource. I had the founder, John Williams, on my podcast a few years back. And what he does is he takes and calculates inflation like Hex Monkey mentioned.
Right.
The old way, not his own method. He just uses the government's old method and shows what inflation would really be.
Right.
And so they're definitely hiding. And everybody has to realize inflation is this insidious hidden tax that destroys purchasing power. It destroys people's standard of living. It is a pickpocket and a thief, and it's stealing from people.
A silent thief. Yeah. A silent thief. Yeah. That people.
Most people don't understand it. They just think, prices go up. That's just normal. Well, why does it have to be normal? Right. It doesn't have to be normal.
I mean, so would you? Would you enjoy deflation? over time, or like because like a large amount of deflation is very problematic.
Yeah,
right.
no question. You're absolutely right. I mean, look, if you're one of the elites running the world, running the economy,
Right.
obviously we have a centrally planned economy,
Right.
right? Your biggest concern is not inflation.
Right.
It's deflation. Because deflation is this downward spiral. And what it does is it causes people to delay purchasing decisions because it'll be cheaper tomorrow.
Right.
Inflation, however, incentivizes people to make decisions today because it'll be more expensive tomorrow. So they like that, and that is good for an economy in the sense that people will buy things, right? Because that's what you have to
We're
have.
a consumer economy.
Yeah. And so deflation is a really dangerous spiral. Right. So they try to avoid that one at all costs.
Right. It's almost like you want somewhere between like 1% inflation or 1% deflation or something like that.
And you know, the thing they're fighting against is something called the Phillips curve. Okay. And the Phillips curve is this measure of unemployment versus inflation.
Right.
And what they're trying to do is balance these two things to keep the unemployment rate reasonable and the inflation rate reasonable. And of course, we all know the Fed targets about 2% inflation.
Yes.
It's they're in a really tough spot. I mean, the Fed screwed this up so badly. Yeah. They let the economy run way too hot for way too long, and now they're raising rates too suddenly. They should have raised sooner and more gradually. Yeah. And they could have had a soft landing.
Do you think it should have been like 2 years ago, or not? It should have really like 2 or 3 years ago, doing like 25 basis points a quarter or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but you know, all you had to do is look when those first lockdowns lifted, and everybody rushed out to buy a house and move across the country and leave the cities for the suburbs. You know, that was an inflationary event. It was pushing up the real estate prices. The supply chain shortages were a problem. Jerome Powell said it's transitory. It's transitory. Of course, that wasn't true. You know, we all know now. They should have just, when they saw that happening, they should have given some gentle rate increases every meeting, as you said.
Yeah. I mean, they should have just let a lot of. They should have let a lot more corporations or banks fail, basically. You know, the 2006, 7.
Of course.
Sort of. I mean, that's where all this stems from, basically. But then, but it's a weird thing, sort of like now. We're kind of coming this from in terms of age, right? I'm 31 right now, and basically I graduated high school right on 2009. Right, so like my whole adult life has been this, and this is also like a problem too, because it's like obviously I've been studying history, and I've been like I kind of grew up on like Bloomberg radio, listening to like to the Fed minutes and everything like that, but most people aren't. It's I think you said this earlier, where like this is all you know, in a way, and it's like that is the problem as well, because like, historically, like this is an amazing time, but people are like, well, it should be that cheap, always.
People really need to have a better sense of history,
right?
And the problem is the education system is such a complete scam. It's so rigged that history has been revised and revised and revised. It's been whitewashed, sanitized, memory holed, and these disgusting big tech companies. That if I had to pick one problem that is the biggest problem facing the human race, literally the biggest problem, because it has so many implications. It is big tech company censorship.
Yes,
that is the biggest problem facing the human race. It's not climate change. It's not COVID 1984. COVID 1984. It's censorship. That is absolutely the biggest threat to humanity. No question.
No, I definitely. I mean, because it's scary. I mean, like, you could even say, because they're putting censorship into money right now. I mean, every major government will have at the very least, within by 2026, have the beginning of, or already have fully implemented out their digital currency. A fiat digital currency, a global government fucking backed digital currency, and these things are pretty scary, because it's like for most of these governments they're gonna lay them on pretty likely. Hey, if you want your next stimulus check, you have to log into an app
on
and
your
get
phone.
on. That's how they get the Americans,
of
right?
Course.
That's how they get the Western. Over there in China, they're steps ahead of us, where they're pretty much going to have they're really going to have it rolled out by 23, maybe 24. I would probably say more like 24. I'm kind of guesstimating here a little bit, but It adds this thing where they can make your money disappear. So like if you don't use it, you spend it, and then taking people's ability to save. Like most people when I say that, they think, oh, I have to spend the money. Oh, that fucking sucks. Right. But it's because yes, that sucks, but they're missing the most dangerous part is that you lose your ability to save.
Well, let's back up and explain the big picture of that. So the CBDCs, or the central bank digital currencies, are a very scary thing. And here's why. I mean, they'll be super convenient. Oh, yeah. We're all going to love it. It's going to be, we're going to sacrifice freedom for convenience like we always do. That's what humans do. And the central bank digital currencies, they will be able to, through an app on your phone or your watch, or maybe a chip implanted in your body, okay? That's where it's going. We all know that. Yeah. They will be able to control your money. This is why they want universal basic income, because UBI, everyone gets $1,000 a month or whatever it is as kind of a base payment, and that'll come, right now it would come today on your phone. You have an app on your phone. You have a checking account with the Federal Reserve, not Bank of America. Or credit union. Or your credit union or whatever. It's the Federal Reserve is now your bank, right? And so they would be able to control this currency because it's smart currency. So, for example, if there's a curfew and a lockdown, maybe your currency would only be good from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And after that, it wouldn't work. You couldn't buy anything. Right. Maybe if they don't like what you posted on Facebook, they would not let you buy internet access with your CBDC. Maybe they would say, because of a climate lockdown, which is coming, just like the COVID lockdowns, that was the test, right? They will say, the currency is not good more than 1 mile from your house, okay? Say they want to, like you were saying, incentivize spending. Right. They will inflate your money, meaning it gets less and less valuable. It gets debased.
As time goes on, right?
Well, it could be in a week.
Yeah.
It could be in a day. Like, you have to spend before the end of the day. And maybe your inflation rate is different than my inflation rate because they like one of us better than the other.
Right. So again, you are now. Yes, you are delving into like the limitless hole of like fucking that they can do.
Oh yeah,
like
it's the amount of power they would have is insane.
So I usually try to keep it simple, just by saying like, because having the ability to save money is power, because you're saving resources and energy for another time, and for your choosing to then do something with it. Right. By them taking away your ability to save because you have to spend the money right away, you are a slave. Yeah. At that point, because then you can only take the government dole. I mean, the reason, like, living in like it's different all over the world and stuff, but like Section 8 or like whatever government housing basically. Yeah. You are basically being a paid slave to stay in that lower class, basically, because it's like if you start making money, we're increasing your rent. I know people like this and stuff where, like, if they start working, or one of their sons or kids starts working, their rent goes up, and it's a de-incentivizer to like actually try to progress in their life. Of course, but I also
Hayek wrote about it, The Road to Serfdom. Okay, yeah. There it is. Yeah, we're living in a time now, folks, where we've got a couple of major books that you can still get, and you need to read them. Lay them out, please. If you already have, you need to read them again. Okay, we are living in a world right now of a combination of George Orwell's 1984, of Huxley's Brave New World, of Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, and there was another one. Oh, and Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. Okay, like 4 major works. Right. That's the world we're living in. It's scary. And technology helps tyrants scale power. And the tyrants this time aren't exactly the governments, although they always are. They always are. Because the governments have the monopoly on the ability to inflict violence. Think about it. Right. That's what every law is. Right. Every law, the end point of any law is the ability to inflict violence. Meaning, you don't pay your parking ticket. Okay, you get another notice. There's now a fine. You got to pay double. And then if you ignore that, eventually someone will show up at your house with a gun. Right. And either shoot you or take your freedom away. Yeah. Right? Until you comply. Yeah. And so that's what laws are. They are the ability to inflict violence. But what the government is doing now is using big tech companies as proxies. For their scary ends. Yeah. And so we all know that Google and Facebook and Amazon and all these other companies, all these big tech companies, they have armies of lobbyists.
Correct.
Okay?
Yeah.
And these lobbyists go to Washington, D.C., and they buy off politicians.
Yep.
So why wouldn't they make a deal? Like, hey, look, if you pass some law that favors us, then we will give you data on people, and we'll sell out the Americans that are our customers that use Gmail. Like, what's in their emails?
Yeah.
Maybe the government needs to know, right? And it's all under the guise of safety. And
of course,
it's for our own good. We got to be protected.
I mean, we can't really think for ourselves, so that has to be done.
Yeah,
of course, it has to be done.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing that nobody's talking about the NSA anymore?
Right.
That has been just completely overshadowed by every other fiasco they've created.
Right.
10 years ago, everyone was talking about that big NSA headquarters they were building or in Utah, and how they were going to, they're keeping all this data, our phone conversations, our emails, our text messages, everything is stored. Nobody even talks about that anymore.
Right.
I mean, remember the memes at the time?
Yeah.
People would post on social media like a meme that, oh, my hard drive crashed. Oh, don't worry, the NSA has the backup.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to back up your hard drive anymore. The NSA has your backup.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and then there's, oh my God. Yeah. And to tell you the truth, they're more realistically that they do have the backup, and on top of that, I think, was it Google? I think maybe Google has a backup as well. Like, depending on what you use, they have the. So there's probably
use Google Drive.
Yeah, use Google
There's
Drive.
their backup.
This is why we tell you guys never put your fucking seed phrases on the internet. You write them in the physical world, because there's 3 copies now. All it takes is somebody working even a low-level job or just knowing how to play with that interface. How many hacks have we heard about, like what's called Apple Cloud?
Yeah.
And stuff.
iCloud.
Or iCloud, yeah. How many? I mean, that's how all the nudes go down, right? If they can get your nudes, they can get your seed phrases.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Celebrity nude pictures is what he means. Yeah.
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 Well, yeah, that's true too. I mean, Richard Hart.
Well, and even Apple said, "Look, we're going to start scanning your photos for child porn." Right? Which that seems like a good idea on its face. We don't want child porn going on.
Right.
But do you have some pervert sitting in a cubicle at Apple looking at your kids' pictures? I mean, how the hell do they do that? That's scary. And the misinterpretation of those pictures, or maybe if someone wants to frame you, they could just add a photo that wasn't really there.
I mean, have
you
ever
you
seen?
didn't actually take.
Have you ever
it
seen
suddenly
Black Mirror?
Appeared? Yeah. I've seen the show.
Yeah. I mean, it's that sort of stuff where like one of the greatest episodes they had on there was like the one where basically everyone had to wear basically a contact lens where it records everything throughout the day, and then of course in that episode
that'll be the way you get your central bank digital currency, by wearing the contact lens.
Contact, yeah. And then they retina scan you, and then they got you and stuff, right? Yeah. But I mean, this is.
The promise of this technology is beautiful.
Yeah.
I used to say, although post-COVID I don't say it too much on my show anymore, but I used to always say, my famous quote was, "It's an amazing time to be alive."
Yes.
And it really is. And all of this technology should be making our lives amazing. Of course, it's getting abused by tyrants and scumbags. Yeah. They will soon be scanning what goes into your toilet, which is good on its face, because that's your health, right? They can monitor your health that way. And, with your Apple Watch, they can monitor your health, and all that's great. These so many promises of technology, but it will always be used by evil people to do bad things.
Yes.
And that's what's so bad. It's so sad that it's turned into that.
Yeah. I mean, if they can use, if it can be monetized and used against you, they'll do it, basically. Yeah. It's a it's kind of mind-boggling how the world really is and stuff like that. I mean, like it is sort of like the Peter Thiel thing, 0 to 1, where like have you ever read that book before?
Yeah, it's great book. Peter Thiel, I'm a big fan. He's brilliant.
A lot of his stuff is also coming true and stuff like that. And then what was the sovereign individual?
Yeah,
that's a lot of the sovereign
that
individual
was written in the 90s.
Yes,
by the way, yeah.
That book is coming 100% true. What's going on right now? I mean, the whole digital nomad thing. I mean, they basically talk about it right there in the book and stuff.
Sure.
And like, literally, like we could take. Like, I think we talked about this too. Is like, let's go on a fucking week-long trip and stuff. You could just take your laptop and then you can work from anywhere, basically.
No, technology is incredible, and it should be just rewarding everybody and lifting humanity.
Right.
But unfortunately, it is also in the hands of bad people and governments and big disgusting companies that are abusing it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we've beaten this dead horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is
Okay, that's it, folks. I hope you're not too depressed now.
So, can I ask you a question? How did, I mean, obviously, this is the first time my guests are actually like, getting a chance to actually see you and stuff on screen. But how did you get into real estate?
I grew up poor.
Yeah.
And in Los Angeles, California, and I didn't like being poor very much. And by about, you want the honest answer?
Yeah, please.
Okay. I'll seem like a real nerd here. But around ninth grade, as I was into becoming an adult, I noticed that I went to a very mixed school. Okay. So we had integration. Okay. That was the time of integration where they were busing kids in from very bad neighborhoods. And they were really mixing the schools as part of this plan to make the great society, right? Which
the melting pot.
Yeah,
right?
it was a disaster. It doesn't work, but whatever. So the school was very mixed with all socioeconomic classes in my junior high school,
Right.
And I was in the lower end of that.
Yeah.
I wasn't in the lowest, okay, but I realized that the cool group, with all the pretty girls, they were hanging out with the rich guys.
Yeah.
And from the rich families that lived in an area called Cheviot Hills. So a lot of those parents were in the movie business and stuff like that. And they were, wealthy. And they had the nice new clothes. They'd go on cool trips all the time. And all the pretty girls were hanging around them. And so I wanted to be in that group. And I wasn't. Right. And so it motivated me. And I remember, a little later, by the time I was 16 years old, I saw an infomercial with a real estate guru. And, it seemed so great. He was talking about buying houses and investing in properties. And I got his book. And I read 3 whole chapters. And I was only 16, okay?
Right.
As Kid Rock says in that great song All Summer Long, which is a great music video, by the way. He says, "My thoughts were short, my hair was long."
Yeah.
Okay? And that was me. And now I don't have much hair, unfortunately. But so, I put the book down, but my mom picked it up. And she read the whole thing. Okay. And she started reading other real estate books and going to seminars. 2 years later, I'm 18 years old. I'm about to graduate from high school. She says, "Jason, there's this real estate seminar by Disneyland in Anaheim, California, right? Where it's not too far from where we lived."
Yep.
And she said, "Why don't you go? Why don't you go to the real estate seminar?" And so I couldn't do anything alone at that age. I rounded up 9 of my buddies from high school.
Right.
I got them all to go. And so it's Friday night. The first speaker comes on, and he's talking about, points.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are points? I don't know what he's talking about. And what he meant was loan points. So when you get a mortgage on a property, you pay prepaid interest, which are points, which is 1% of the loan amount. Okay. And so that seminar went the whole weekend, and I stayed the whole weekend. By Saturday morning,
was it actually a seminar?
Yeah, it was like it was like a bunch of speakers.
Okay,
it was a speaker fest, and they were all pitching their programs and stuff.
Got it. Okay.
But they'd talk for an hour, and then there'd be another speaker, and so it was good. And so by Saturday morning, that was Friday night. By Saturday morning, all of my friends except one had gone to the beach. So one of my buddies is still there with me all day Saturday. By Sunday, he bailed, and I was the only one that stayed the whole time till the last speaker on Sunday afternoon. And what I realized is I just got to learn the basics of real estate.
Right.
So I thought, I'll just get my real estate license. I'm 18 years old. I could get a license, right? And that would teach me the basics. And so I enrolled in Century 21 Real Estate School for $99, not adjusted for inflation. That was the cost. Okay, so I don't know what it is today. It's like way less, adjusted for inflation. And I finished. I got my real estate license. My first year of college, I'm going to Long Beach City College. And I got my real estate license, and I started selling real estate for Century 21 part-time while I was going to college.
Right.
And my first full month in the business, I sold 5 properties, and I thought, this is too easy.
Wait, you sold 5 properties?
Yeah,
Wow.
because I was working, and most real estate agents were not working. They were meeting in the office, standing around the coffee pot or the water cooler, and complaining. And I was working. Okay. And so, I drove people around in my little Volkswagen Jetta. I put classified ads in the newspaper. That's when we had newspaper. And people would call and they'd buy these government repo properties from me, HUD and VA repos. I sold them, showing these houses were like boarded up, bad areas. So I sold properties to first-time home buyers, usually Hispanic, a lot of them, and then to investors as well. And I helped them buy the houses. About 6 months into my career, I'm now 20, okay? And one of my clients, a guy named Jim Wool, he had purchased a couple properties from me. And he said, Jason, I don't want this property. I don't really like this one I bought from you. Why don't you take the listing and sell it, and I'll buy something else from you? Okay. And I said, hey, Jim, I don't want to sell it for you. I want to buy it from you. So living at home with my mom, I bought my first rental property. So I was a landlord, but I lived at home.
But you lived with your mom. You lived with your mom, basically.
And so I bought this first rental property, and I had what everybody would have considered a bad experience.
Right.
Because those tenants, they paid for a little while, and then I'm like knocking on the door. I look like a kid, and they didn't respect me. Okay, and then they just stopped paying the rent because they thought, I'm not going to do anything, right?
We can get over on this kid. Yeah.
So I had to evict them, and it was a bad experience, that first property, right? It turns out it wasn't as bad as I thought at the time, because I did sell the property and I made money on it.
Yeah.
And but here's the lesson from that I just want to share with everybody. Look, the road to success is much more difficult than it looks on TV. Yeah. Okay? You're going to have problems and struggles and things that are going to knock you down. And I would have had every right, logically, I could have rationalized it to give up and say, this real estate thing doesn't work.
Right.
And now I've made millions and millions of dollars with real estate, And, but I could have easily given up right then.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I didn't. And I just kept buying properties, and I kept selling properties as a broker. And, it's been very good.
Yeah. And you just made such a great point that the road to success is not an easy road.
Oh,
right? It's terrible, but it's the best road. It really is.
It's the only road.
It's the only road.
You got to take it.
Because if you don't take, obviously there's a million paths to get there, right? There's all different lanes and stuff.
Sure.
And even I as like a guy from crypto and stuff, like the road we're taking is not.
It was easy.
It was easy before. It was easy a year ago. Yeah, right.
Before the winter came.
But this is my third rodeo. And there's cycles in crypto. Usually, crypto cycles are 4 years, right? Just like high school and college for the most part, right? It's 4-year cycles. This is my third cycle in the crypto space, and the road's going to be bumpy. But you come out of it, you're going to make some big money. Same thing in real estate. When things are troubling and stuff like that, you bunker down. You figure a way in the industry if you really want. That is amazing too. Like you because of you got your mom into real estate.
Yeah. She got her license about 6 months before I did, but I got her into it. Yeah. And she did very well with it too. She made millions of dollars also. Yeah.
Hit it, man. Damn, that was amazing, dude.
Yeah. Hey, don't forget, there's going to be dog days, George.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We have a special guest in studio. George is going to pan over there. See, there, that's the dog. Hey, look at the camera. Oh, there she is.
Up here.
Puppy cam. Puppy cam.
The puppy cam, yeah. That's Coco. Oh, what a great shot.
Yeah, that's an amazing shot.
Isn't that awesome? Yeah. So adorable. We just had to throw.
I'm a sucker for dogs. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're better than people. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, look, if one quality defines success in any endeavor, it would be this. I think investing, business, just anything in life, right? It's this. It's the ability to delay gratification for a longer term, bigger future. Think about it. That's what investing is. Look, you could go out and spend all your money and blow it and enjoy it today, or you could invest it, which means you don't get to spend it today.
Right.
You delay gratification for a bigger future, right? Now, the interesting thing is, I've kind of flipped that script recently. Well, I haven't flipped it yet, but I want to flip it because I've made tons of money. I've got a high net worth. And I want to start learning to spend money better. That's a new problem.
It's
a hashtag first world problems.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But that's a thing, right? I've been conservative all my life. I've delayed gratification. And now I'm trying to learn how to effectively spend and give money.
Right.
which is kind of the second half of life. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you become a gatherer of resources. Now your resources create resources, and now you want to affect change in your world, or just make it a better place, which is like an honorable thing to do. This is what happens usually with a lot of successful businessmen, is like they go on this philanthropy kind of tour on the last 20 years of their life, or 30, or the rest back half of their life.
The problem is a lot of these charities just aren't good, okay, and they're very inefficient.
Can we be honest? Most charities are just a way to avoid taxes.
Yeah, you know, it varies like anything, right?
Yeah.
But it's to be a good philanthropist it's challenging, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Probably gonna get roasted for this, but it was like, you know, like I said, in the future, it's like, like, I'm probably they're gonna pull this back and say, like, Miguel, you know, like, well, you're shitting on this 20 years from now, but like back when you were younger and stuff, you said this, which is, you know, like, I'm gonna be like, you know, I'm putting $1 billion into this what's it called, this charity right here, right? But I'm gonna put my children as the boards of directors of the charity and stuff like that, which is
that's not necessarily
bad.
bad.
Yeah, it's not necessarily bad, but like most people sort of think like, it's because people don't know, really, too. And then on top of that, too, because you just give the money to random people to blow it on dumb shit, and then it won't get properly allocated, which is true,
Yeah. So, one of the things that one of the Google founders said, and, you know, listen, I have my complaints about Google for sure, of course. But one of the things I think it was maybe Larry Page said is, you know, he would rather give his money to someone like Elon Musk, who's going to change the world, even though it's a for-profit endeavor, than give it to a charity, right? Because the vast majority of charities have not solved the problems they were created for.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, you know, there's a great saying, a book I read a long, long time ago, very small book that I highly recommend, called The Greatest Management Principle in the World. Don't let the title deceive you. But this is the thesis of the book, and he says it over and over in the book. What gets rewarded gets repeated. What gets rewarded gets repeated. And think about it. If you're a charity and you want to cure cancer, right? Well, if you cure cancer, you don't have a charity anymore, and you don't have a job anymore, right? So it's like a politician that wants to stay in power. The incentive, and I'm not saying it's evil, it might just be a subconscious incentive, is to perpetuate the problem so you can still have power, job, position, prestige, whatever.
Yeah. Definitely. I want to shout out Mike Tyson in the chat with a $50 super chat.
Mike Tyson. Hey, you know who we need in the super chat besides Mike Tyson? Tyler Durden.
Yeah, Tyler Durden.
One of the best movies ever, Fight Club.
Fight Club, baby.
Great movie.
But shout out to Mike Tyson with the $50 super chat. He said, "Thank you, DCC. Thank you, Mr. Hartman. This information is mind-boggling. I've always known the government overly spies on us. I'm going to read all these books. And with that being said, do you recommend we as people? I mean, what do you recommend to us people to protect ourselves?"
Well, all of the stuff we're talking about. So, just first off, understand it's happening.
Yes.
Okay. Understand what they're doing. Remember that when it comes to money, the key is to have things and resources over pieces of paper with dead presidents on.
Right.
Because the pieces of paper with the dead presidents can be debased, and it constantly is through inflation. So things have intrinsic value, and it's important to own and control things. Right? Because they have value intrinsically, regardless of what currency they're attached to or not attached to. You know, one of the things I talked about on my podcast a lot right after the Great Recession started.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, it's 2007, 2008, Great Recession, the worst economy in 7 decades is underway. Okay. And I said to my listeners, I said, look, if you looked around the day before, and most people look at the Great Recession as starting when Lehman Brothers failed.
Right.
Okay. So, but, you know, that's a fuzzy.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, it depends who you talk to. But if you looked around the world before the Great Recession, when everybody thought things were great and business was booming and the real estate market was booming and the stock market and whatever, right? If you looked around, there was a certain amount of oil, gold, food, agriculture, natural resources, copper, aluminum, every commodity on earth.
Right.
There was a certain amount of housing stock. And then look at the day after the Great Recession began, say the day after Lehman failed.
Right.
The same resources were there.
Yeah.
Okay, the resources
production.
did not change. There was no war. There was no nuclear bomb that exploded all the housing stock, that got rid of all the gold. It was all still there. Yeah. All the oil was still there. All the everything was still there. It simply changed its nominal price, but its intrinsic value was still needed. Yeah. Still, that gallon of gas got you the same amount of miles of driving pleasure or hedonics, right?
Right.
The day before the Great Recession and the day after the Great Recession, right? So the things have intrinsic value. The money does not.
Right.
And we really shouldn't call it money. We should call it currency. Because that's the proper name. Right. Money is intrinsically valuable. Right. Currency is a symbol of value.
Yeah, and then everything has value that we get. So I mean, there's a classic thing in crypto that we say that money has value because we give it value.
Right.
Right. So it's like if it's useful to us humans, then it has value, basically, right? So yeah, I mean, we need food, we need a place to sleep, there's all things, relationships and stuff like that. These are really important to humans and stuff. So we put a huge amount of value to it. I mean,
sure.
I mean, entire industries are just built on just trying to get laid, basically.
Of course, yeah. Well, hey, listen, that's a human drive.
Yeah.
If you look at Maslow's hierarchy, okay, and the base layer is, and that's like a crypto term, right?
Right.
The base layer is food, clothing, shelter, safety, right? And then after that, you move up that hierarchy of needs, and sex is in there because. Yeah. But I would argue that what's interesting about sex, other than it's just interesting,
other than awesome,
is that. It is a form of acceptance, which is a very high-level human need, right? Acceptance, the drive for acceptance. And so that's part of that whole equation. But I wanted to get back to your thing about value.
Yeah.
Okay? There are two primary value drivers for anything in the world.
Right.
Any item, any relationship, whatever. Two value drivers. Utility and scarcity. That's it. You can value anything with those two value drivers. So think about it. Why is this computer valuable? Because it has utility and, they're somewhat scarce, right? They're not everywhere. And why do your loved ones have value? Right. Because they're extremely scarce. There's only one of them. Right? And they have a utility for you, right? Because they're part of your life, and it might be SDX, like you were saying before, if it's a spouse or a significant other. So those are the two value drivers for anything, utility and scarcity. Right. And if currency is going to have value, of course, it has to have utility. You have to be able to buy things with it and trade, but it also has to have scarcity. So when Jerome Powell turns on the money printer, you reduce the scarcity.
Right.
And that's why 21 million Bitcoins has intrinsic scarcity.
Right. Locked in. Yeah.
Locked in, never going to change, right? And so those are the value drivers. Unfortunately, Bitcoin doesn't have enough, at least not yet, utility.
Right.
Hopefully we'll get there.
Yeah.
And other cryptocurrencies, same things apply.
Same thing. I mean, I'd say the biggest limiting factor for crypto right now is that there's just not enough now, obviously, the best thing that crypto does is price go up and down, right? That's really what we use it for the most part, just to gain wealth. But
it's got to become currency.
Yes, yeah. It's not we couldn't handle tons of like on if we even put like 1% of the internet transactions on Ethereum,
it would crash.
It would fucking crash. It would be unusable, too expensive.
And Bitcoin would be even worse.
Even worse. Yeah, same sort of thing. So it's like even right now, I can't think of a single one. Now there's people talking, what about this currency? What about that? I'm like, no. Those ain't gonna work. So it's just this thing where, we're still in that infancy stage and there's still these upgrades coming on. Maybe one day, like, we could actually have a significant portion of, like, transactions actually fucking running through crypto. And that could be, like, the saving grace and stuff. Because I do believe over the long term, I mean, the governments are doing to themselves. They're printing, right now, why, I know the interest rates are going up, but you have every major government, including the United States, printing their currency in order to get more dollars. Yeah. And that's weakening the. I think the euro went under $1 for a second.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So there's a compared to what thing. It's great that you brought that up because so many people like the Peter Schiffs of the world, right? I'll pick on him. I mean, Peter Schiff is a super smart guy.
Yes,
he's been on my show. I've interviewed him. He's very smart. I call him the master of the soundbite. But why is he wrong so much? Okay. And why he's wrong so much is because he's not really answering the compared to what question in many ways when it comes to the US dollar.
Right.
And he's also focusing on math rather than things outside of math. And here's what I mean by those two things. Number one is the US dollar is the best currency.
Yes.
Okay? Everyone likes to say, well, it's not backed by anything. You know, it's a fiat currency. Oh, grow up. You know what it's backed by? Aircraft carriers.
Yeah. Guns.
Fighter jets. Intercontinental ballistic missiles. The dollar is backed. Believe me, it is backed by the most powerful military the human race has ever known.
Yes.
So it is backed. Okay, and then compare it to what other currency? Like who's going to beat the dollar?
Right.
Right? It's nobody for the longest time. It's going to maintain its reserve currency status for a very long time. Yes, there are some people nibbling at the edges. I know Russia, China. I know what everybody's going to say, but it's just not significant.
Right. I think right now 85% of all international trade is denominated in dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, I wouldn't be more shocked if it wasn't even higher, really. But I mean, we do have a one world currency already, basically. I mean, it's not like everybody has to use it, but it really is what it is. And I've been saying this for a while within crypto. As crypto expands, one thing I feel like this is like a secret, or maybe I don't know how to say it, but I guess like this is kind of like a secret kind of like financial international policy that the U.S. government's been implementing, because they really could have actually cracked down on cryptocurrency a very long time ago. 2013.
Well, a lot of people believe the CIA is behind Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, look, Facebook had this. I'm sorry. The CIA had this program that basically was Facebook, and then a year later they shut down the program, and then Facebook got created.
They just invested in Facebook.
They just that's what happened. Yeah. So it's just, Jesus Christ, the CIA, my God. Join the CIA, baby. But it's just a sort of thing where we're in just this kind of crazy digitized world and stuff. So yeah, I mean, Jesus.
Well, yeah.
It's
that's it.
That's it, man. That's
so how can maybe we ought to switch focus?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And maybe we ought to say, look, how do we benefit from this?
Right.
Right. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Sure.
And George, hopefully I can share my screen here.
Yeah, please.
I was trying to connect. If you want to do one more time.
Oh my gosh, here technology! I swear. You know what they're probably doing? It's probably the elites who are sabotaging our screen shares. What do you think about that?
I can totally believe it. Yeah.
100%. Without a doubt.
Our producer says 100%. Yeah. Okay, so we'll see if this will work here. Okay, it's on. Oh, we'll see.
Let's see if it works. New studio, you guys.
Yeah.
Not pulling up yet.
Okay. All right. Anyway, so I created about 18 years ago. I created this strategy that I teach my real estate investors because what my company does, I have a few companies, but my real estate company helps investors buy properties nationwide.
Right.
And I think income property is the most historically proven asset class in the entire world. And I know a lot of crypto people want to get into income property because of the stability. Yeah. And one of the great things about it is it has multi-dimensional characteristics. And so that can really, really benefit people. But we're in a mess. And I think all of your listeners definitely know that because they follow this stuff.
Yes.
The U.S. government has massive amounts of debt. It cannot repay the debt. It's mathematically impossible. And so what does it do? I've identified 6 ways that the government can get out of their mess.
Right.
One of them is to simply default on the promises they've made. To say to everybody, look, sorry, we overspent. We can't pay for Social Security. We can't pay for any kind of disability payments. We can't pay for police and fire. We can't pay for infrastructure. We can't pay for public schools. Whatever it is, right? We can't do it. We're just broke. That's going to be no way. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
We saw what happened when they instituted austerity measures in Europe and especially Greece. Yeah. Okay, and other countries. And so that doesn't go over well. It's politically suicide. Yeah. So they're not going to default outright. They could raise taxes. But the problem is the math doesn't work. Like I said, if you taxed everybody at 100%, you could not pay the bill.
Right.
Okay, it's just impossible.
Nor where people work. A lot of people
Well,
just stop
of course
working.
they'll stop working. You know, it'll be like communism. You know, we act like we're working and they act like they're paying us, right? You know, yeah. So they're not gonna do that. And they could have a yard sale. I mean, look, years ago, I don't know if anybody remembers in the news, there was all this talk about selling a bunch of U.S. ports to Dubai. Right? They were going to buy U.S. ports, and that didn't happen. But, you know, those kind of things come up. The U.S. has a lot of assets, right? And it could sell things off in a garage sale, a yard sale, right? So that's one thing it could do. It could also use the military to steal the assets of other countries. Okay? So I'm saying this all from a U.S. perspective, understanding we have a global audience.
I've been saying for years we should annex Canada. I've been saying it every day. I mean, ever since they've stopped.
Or maybe at least Greenland. Trump tried to buy it.
I think that was that was
a smart deal.
That was such a smart deal.
That needs to happen, that deal, yeah.
Because, I mean, obviously, there's so many. Because that shipping lane is starting to melt now, and it's going to become
valuable.
It's super. Yeah. We have pretty good control of it right now, just because we have Alaska up there. Yeah. But if we had Greenland, we would control basically 50% of the whole trade lane.
The Russians want to get control of that very badly. Yeah.
So we'll annex Greenland. We'll get rid of these Canadians and stuff like that, and then all the maple syrup is mine.
I like the Canadians. Just get rid of Justin Trudeau.
Yes.
Okay, because he is a dictator.
Wait, Fidel Castro's son?
Oh, is he? Yeah.
Oh, you haven't heard?
I don't know. I've heard stuff like that. I don't know. I haven't investigated it.
It's kind of. I'm not. Well, I don't know if it's true or not, but from what I've heard, I mean, there's
Trudeau needs to go.
Yeah, Trudeau needs to go.
Trudeau
definitely
needs to go. Okay, so we could steal. We could use the military to steal the assets of other countries.
Right.
On the good, those are all negative. On the positive side, technological innovation.
Yeah.
You know, we'll say this from an American perspective.
Right.
You know, on my podcast, I have listeners in 189 countries, so it's a global audience. You have that too, of course. Yes. But from the American perspective, you know, maybe there's some big innovation in energy, biotechnology, nanotechnology, whatever, right, that really benefits humanity. It makes us all very prosperous, and that would be a great thing. But the most likely thing that will happen is we will simply inflate our way out of the mess.
Yeah.
And that is the best business plan for governments and central banks. And that's why everybody listening and watching should simply align their interest with the two most powerful forces the human race has ever known, governments and central banks. Mm. Just align our interests with them.
Yeah.
I mean, look, philosophically, we all hate what they're doing.
Right.
Okay, I know crypto people hate it.
Yeah.
I hate it philosophically. I get it. But from a practical standpoint, we're not going to beat them. They are the most powerful entities the human race has ever known.
Right.
They are going to have their way. And their business plan is inflation. So we've got to align our interests with them. So how do we do that? What's the most effective way to do that? Well, we can invest in inflation-resistant or inflation-proof assets.
Yeah.
Cryptocurrencies, precious metals, those are the traditional things, even though crypto is not that old to be traditional yet, but you know, in its brief time, that's a traditional idea. But the other thing we can do is simply use debt. And I always like to say debt is my favorite four-letter word.
Right.
So we can use debt to basically game the system. Yeah. And here's how we're going to do it.
Dave Ramsey, cover your ears.
Yeah, Dave Ramsey is clueless about this, okay? Dave Ramsey is good.
He's a good person. He's a good person.
For the audience he speaks to,
yes,
he's good. Because most of those people have a ton of credit card debt. They're overspending. They're not delaying gratification.
Right.
And Dave Ramsey would agree with me and say delay gratification for a bigger future.
Right.
That's all good until you get to the point of actually wanting to make money. Dave Ramsey is about getting your life in order.
Right.
And he's good for that.
Yeah.
His audience needs to hear that.
The debt snowball.
The problem is you need to graduate from Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
Okay, graduate from 6th grade and move on to junior high school and college, right? In the idea here, the metaphor.
Yeah, in the metaphor.
And so debt is the best way to game the system and to beat the Federal Reserve and all other central banks at their own game.
Right.
So let's just understand how inflation works for a minute. To understand inflation, we need to distinguish between real and nominal. Real and nominal. Okay. So if I was holding up a dollar, which I'm not, I don't have one on me, they're not that useful, unfortunately, so I don't carry them very much. But if I was holding up a dollar, I would say, pull out a bill here, and let's just demonstrate this, you know. Okay, so here is $100, okay? Zoom in on this. What is this called, audience?
Trash.
This is called, no. Hey, listen, I'll keep it if it's trash. Okay. This is called $100, right? That's what it's called today.
Right.
What was it called 50 years ago? It was also called $100. It has the same name. The word nominal means in name only. The name has not changed, but the value has definitely changed. In 50 years, the value of this is like a lot lower, right? Well, it's about this much compared to what it was 50 years ago, right? I mean, maybe less. I don't know. It might be that much,
Might be
right?
that much, yeah.
I don't know offhand. But that's the nominal versus real value. So we have to distinguish between that. We have to understand inflation is the insidious hidden tax that destroys purchasing power, it destroys the standard of living. Inflation destroys the value of stocks, bonds, equity in real estate, and savings accounts.
Right, especially savings accounts, yeah.
Especially. But it also, thankfully, destroys the value of debt. Because this strategy I created 18 years ago, and I actually trademarked it. It's called inflation-induced debt destruction. IIDD. I know it's a mouthful. Inflation-induced debt destruction. And I trademark that because it is the tool that works for people to beat the system. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to borrow money at today's value and pay it back at tomorrow's value.
Right.
And that value will decline with inflation.
Right.
But we're going to do one better than that. We're going to use a commodity that has intrinsic value that's not tied to any one currency. If you think about it, we're in an office now, but say it were a house, it doesn't matter, office, house, whatever, right? Well, look at this wall, right? What's in that wall? Well, we've got lumber, we've got drywall, maybe steel beams, we've got copper wire.
Right.
Okay, under us we have concrete. We have lots of petroleum products in this structure.
Right.
Okay? All of these are commodities that are traded globally, not dependent on any one currency.
Correct.
Okay? They have intrinsic value. So I call this packaged commodities investing. So what we do is we go to the bank and we say, look, I want to buy this house. I want to rent it out. And you know what? I don't want to pay for the whole thing. I'll give you 20% of the value. And they say, okay, we'll loan you 80%. We'll loan you that in today's dollars. You can pay us back over 3 decades. You can pay us back in cheaper dollars over 3 decades.
Over 3 decades.
And so this is a great deal. Inflation is the most powerful method of wealth redistribution. Most people think taxation redistributes wealth. And it's true, it does. But inflation is much more powerful because people don't understand it. Okay, it's more hidden, it's more subtle. Inflation redistributes wealth from lenders to borrowers, and it redistributes wealth from old people to young people. Now, why does it do that? That's interesting, right?
I would love to, please tell me,
So old people hopefully have assets.
Yes.
They have savings accounts, stocks, bonds, and equity in real estate.
Equity in real estate, yeah.
Those things are attacked by inflation. Young people typically, unfortunately, have debt.
Yeah.
And debt is also attacked by inflation in a good way.
In the positive way. So
because it's debased. The debt is debased through inflation.
Right. So assets are hurt over time with inflation, but debt is then destroyed over time with inflation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's inflation-induced debt destruction. But what we want to do, we can't just go out and run up credit card debt and make this work. It won't work.
Right.
Because the interest rate is too high. And it's not attached to an asset that has intrinsic value, like a house. So we get the house, we get great tax benefits from it, we pay the debt back, or really our renters pay it back. I mean, debt sucks when you have to pay it back yourself.
Yeah.
What if you could outsource the debt obligation to someone called a tenant? You can. And you can say to them, look, I want you to pay my mortgage debt for me, plus I want you to give me a little extra every month, and I'm going to call that positive cash flow.
Right.
That's a pretty great deal.
That's a pretty nice deal, yeah.
And you pay that debt back, or the tenants do, in cheaper dollars over time. And that's the hidden wealth creator in income property.
Right. That's
inflation-induced debt destruction.
Trademark. Ching.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. And you trademarked that 18 years ago?
No, not 18 years ago, but I started teaching it 18 years ago.
Got it. I mean, that's an amazing. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, yeah, you used. Okay. Not all debt's bad debt and stuff, but I do warn. So I do have to warn people about like one thing, right? So that's a strategy that works in real estate. Now there is times where you can take debt to actually buy cryptos and stuff.
Yes.
But it's very cyclical. I believe. Like, now, obviously, if you're at the end when I do my intro, right, there's like, at the end of the day, you push the green button, you push the red button, you buy or sell, right? Now, right now the prices are down 90% on average.
Yep.
Historically, that's actually a good time to buy. But you have to be very careful what kind of, if you decide to take debt, whether you borrow money from a relative or you get a bank loan. Because the industry is so young right now, that strategy seems extremely risky as well. So it's still not proven,
right?
To tell you the truth. Yeah, just obviously real estate, you've got so many. I mean, thousands of years. You know, or at least.
You've got thousands of years.
Yeah,
you do.
Yeah, but in the modern sense with the banking system and stuff like that, but it's the. I'd actually, I mean, obviously everyone can do what they want, but I think this is not the worst time to actually borrow, to actually get into crypto and stuff like that. But the thing is you have to be very careful. Now, that's only the case for a short period of time, maybe a year or so. After that, I think it's a terrible idea. Terrible idea. And then I'm full agreements with you. Don't get into credit card debt. The interest rate's just too high, and then you put that payment on yourself. And the thing is, your thing has cash flow.
Yeah, you've got to have an asset that'll produce income. That's what makes the deal work.
Right.
And it doesn't have to produce positive cash flow, but it has to produce income to pay its own debt service.
Correct.
This is what I call self-liquidating debt. Okay? You take out the debt, you arrange it, but it's self-liquidating because the cash flow from the asset pays the debt. So everybody will remember, or maybe don't remember because you weren't alive at the time, but in the late 1980s.
No, it wasn't alive.
Right. But in the late 1980s, I mean, there's lots of history on this, so you probably know the history of what I'm going to say. And a lot of these people are still alive that became famous in the late 80s as corporate raiders. Ivan Boesky, Carl Icahn is still alive.
Still doing it.
Yeah. And so all of these different corporate raiders were around, right? And they became very famous. And one of their main strategies was called the LBO. That stood for leveraged buyout.
Right.
And here's the technique. It's pretty simple, and it works with real estate beautifully.
Yeah.
Basically, what they would do is they would borrow the money to buy a company.
Yeah.
And then they would saddle that company with debt. Okay?
Right.
And they would make the company pay the debt back out of its income. Self-liquidating debt.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. That's exactly what we do when we buy rental properties.
Right.
We saddle the property with debt, and we tell the property to pay its own debt back. The tenant pays it back, and it's self-liquidating. This is a leveraged buyout.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, and that's not the only strategy they would do. They would sometimes just buy the company and then just break it off of its parts, basically.
Yeah, well, that is a modified version of the strategy where they split it up.
Yeah.
Okay, and they look around and they say, okay, this company is only, its market cap is $100 million, or I don't know, $1 billion. It's more in the public markets. It's, $50 billion, right? But it owns a bunch of real estate, and the real estate's worth $30 billion, and it's got a bunch of intellectual property, and that's worth $10 billion, and it's got, some other assets, inventory, whatever, and that's worth $20 billion. Well, if you only pay $50 billion, yet the assets add up to $60 billion, you can buy it and split it all up and sell the assets off.
And make an $8 billion profit, probably.
Or $10 billion in that case.
Or $10 billion, yeah. And but that's what they got really famous for, because it was like people were like, you took my job. Or you just, but
that's, my favorite economist is an economist named Joseph Schumpeter.
Okay.
And his main concept was called creative destruction. And that's the you took my job concept. Right? Is that, look, capitalism works so efficiently because it's really good at allocating resources. And so Schumpeter said, this is a good thing, creative destruction, because companies that don't provide the best things will be creatively destroyed.
Right.
And a new, better thing will come along.
Right.
And I know it's painful at the time, it hurts, but, people move on and companies move on and better things are created, and that's creative destruction. Right. It's a good thing.
Kind of like a scorched earth, and then or like burning the field, and then those nutrients.
And then all those minerals and nutrients are in there for new agriculture.
Yeah, new growth.
Growth,
Good old capitalism. That's great, Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Carl Icahn's still alive right now. That's crazy. Yeah, I think I just saw him in a recent interview and stuff. Yeah, he's getting up there though. Yeah. That's for sure. Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, do you think that there's not much corporators anymore just because it's got such a bad connotation? I mean, obviously, a lot of people don't like them.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I don't know. I don't really follow that world. It's not my world. But things change, and there's regulations, and everything gets more regulated, and
right.
They make it harder to lay people off, and so it's harder to execute those strategies than it was back then, I guess.
Right. So maybe the other strategy would just kind of do what the strategy you did is just. If you can get the cash, buy them and have them pay back the loan.
Yeah. Well, they accused Mitt Romney of that stuff when he ran for president in the private equity world. So, there are various versions and degrees of it.
Yeah. The comments are like going wild and stuff. They said Firestream, shoo, and obviously I said took my job.
Yeah. We got any questions in there?
Oh, we got plenty of questions and stuff. Yeah. I mean, there's a tons of them. A lot of people. One Bitcoin. That's what people are saying. But yeah, shout out to Robert Kiyosaki. I'm actually going to have an interview with him pretty soon as well. Yeah,
he's been on my show a couple times.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I mean, shout out to Robert Kiyosaki. He was actually
ask him how he feels about communism and socialism.
How much time do we have? Yeah. But no, definitely. Alex had a great question. People never understand good debt versus bad debt. I mean, and I think it's just most people they don't delay gratification. So obviously they take whatever debt they can get. They take the bad debt now, and then that bites them in the ass later. Right. And on top of that, a lot of people are working jobs, and there is a problem. There's such a. I mean, I talk about this. This is pretty a dark thing that my father actually told me about kind of because he was in construction field for a long time, and then he was being taught by he was just like a subcontractor under a major contractor for a while until he did his own thing. And he told me he was really good friends with basically the boss's boss. And then he told my dad one time, in order to retain your workers, you want to get them on alcohol or something like that. I was like, what? And my dad told me that not that he implemented that, but he was just he's like, he remembers it. He's like, you want to keep them soulless and dreamless for as long as you can, and you can have them as productive people in your company for longer. And I was like, God damn.
I'll tell you on the bigger picture on that idea. Look up what's his name? I can't think of it. Senior moment here, folks. I'll think of it in a moment. Edward, who I'm going to say, the guy that invented modern PR. Right now. I just lost it. But anyway, this whole concept of keeping consumers on a treadmill, and all of that whole idea, right. is really dangerous. We just got to realize, look, we're all being played, okay? And if we just get out of the world of advertising and marketing and social media, I mean, like last night, we started to talk about that. It's just unbelievable. It's like, is anybody present anymore? And I admit I'm guilty of it too, okay? Yeah. But just, we're in this nightclub, everybody's together, there's music, they should be dancing. All they're doing is taking videos of themselves to post on the Instagram. It's freaking stupid. It's just dumb.
It's dumb. I mean, back in the day, the social media was because you were at the party, and then people would talk about you later. Like, oh yeah, Susan was there with me, and John was there, and Miguel was there, and Jason was there, and then that would be like the social proof. Now the social proof has gone digitized and put on the internet, and now if you don't post a picture, you're not doing anything. Yeah. Because it is a sort of. I mean, it's we were all doing it, but then there's people doing it to I literally saw a person where their phone didn't leave their hand the entire time. And stuff. Rolo, I'm talking about you, man. Live stream. No,
it's just crazy.
No. But and thank you so much for you guys for all the comments and stuff about the studio. Thank you so much, man. I'll let you guys know when we're having Robert on and stuff like that. But yeah, man. It's good to see you in here. I wanted to have this kind of big macro talk and this big kind of talk about real estate and stuff because I really believe crypto and real estate are like this.
Edward Bernays. That's who I couldn't think of. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's who invented modern public relations. Yeah, go ahead.
Got it. Yeah, it's Edward Bernays. Okay, I'll definitely
study him.
I'll study him for sure.
That's someone you want to study. Yeah.
Yeah.
He really helped feminism make a leap forward. Unfortunately. Because feminism is just a conspiracy to lower the birth rate of educated people.
Based.
Yeah. I mean, uneducated people don't fall for feminism. Only educated people would be stupid enough to fall for it. You see the contradiction there?
Yeah, I see.
It pervades college campuses.
Right.
But uneducated people wouldn't fall for that. They want to have children and have normal lives not be bitter, and they don't want to have a war between the sexes.
Yeah.
It's just destructive. But Edward Bernays was one of the people that really pushed that agenda forward because it would create more consumerism. Look, folks, I want you to, here's an example of how we're all being played.
Right.
Okay, and I talk about this on my show a lot. Just picture this. Think about it. If you're in government in the 1950s, which was a boom time for America.
Yes.
Because we were the only country not destroyed by the war.
Yeah.
Right?
Everyone's offline.
Yeah. And so America was booming in the 50s. But there's a business cycle, and it was coming to an end. It was seeing its last days.
Yeah.
And so the people in government are thinking, we've really got to make sure we keep the economy pumping.
Right.
Half of the workforce, the potential workforce, is sitting at home raising kids.
Right.
And guess what? They're not contributing to the GDP. The women.
Yes.
They're not paying taxes. We need more tax revenue. We need the GDP to go up, and we need more tax revenue. That's what the government thinks. So how can we get that other half of the human population to work and pay taxes? Okay, that's the first part.
Right.
Now think you're in a smoky room, like in a Mad Men, like the series of Mad Men, right? In Madison Avenue advertising
Don
world.
Draper.
Yeah, Don Draper and all the rest. But you're the businesses, the corporatocracy. And you sell consumer products, you sell appliances, you sell your Procter & Gamble, you sell, laundry soap,
Lucky Strikes.
Everything. Yeah, you sell whatever, right? And you want to sell things to consumers, and you're thinking, gosh, how do we double our market share? Well, let's increase the level of discontent. And let's make sure people don't get married. And if they do get married, let's get them divorced. Because if we want to sell 2 coffee makers and 2 sofas instead of 1, we got to have 2 households.
We got to split the household.
We got to split them up.
Yeah.
So we don't want people to be happy. We don't want them to couple up and pair bond. We want to shove all of this toxic poison into the media, into the movies, the music, everything, right?
Yeah.
Everything, to split people up and make them more discontented. Okay, I mean, think about it. Rollo and the rest of the people, they talk about how women's expectations nowadays are beyond fucking absurdity.
Correct.
It's absurd, right? Do you know what the expectation of a good man used to be? He has a job and he's not abusive. That was a good husband.
That was a good husband.
For eons. Okay? He's responsible, has a good job, and he's not abusive. That was the criteria. That was the list. Okay? Yeah. So now that list is beyond absurdity, right? Yeah. Which I'm fine. Women should expect the best, right? That's fine. But to the point of reality, right? People, when they don't get together, you got to realize this is a scam. It's an intended idea. They're intending to do this to raise discontent because they want to sell 2 of everything.
Right.
In 2 households. I mean, you want to make the real estate market boom? How about selling 2 houses instead of 1?
Right.
Double the number of households, right?
Yeah, definitely. They steal your house and they give it to the lawyer.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine, like, all of these big tech companies and other companies,
right?
They're telling women, we'll freeze your eggs and we're going to promote abortion.
Right.
Because we don't want you to have children.
No. You have to wait.
You won't be working.
Yeah.
We want you to get back in your cubicle and work. We don't want you having kids and raising a family. We're not going to make any money off of that. It's a complete scam. The whole thing is a total scam.
And then misleading an entire generation. I mean, there's entire reports right now. Of
multiple generations now.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
There was a movie in the 70s, I think it was, called Kramer versus Kramer. It was about a divorce, right? And all these movies, all this music, all these books show, they recommend that people have affairs, cheat on each other. There should be no loyalty, no monogamy, right? And it's... and it's interesting because I think women that were fed these ideas thought that men wouldn't respond.
Right.
And clearly they have.
They have.
And now there's a great book that I read a few years ago, and my girlfriend at the time, actually, I got her to read it, and she said, this is just true. It's called Men on Strike, and it's written by women.
Yeah.
And it just talks about how men won't marry anymore because they've realized the cost is too high. The system doesn't treat them fairly. So, it's just not worth it. And this is a sad state of affairs. It really is.
Yeah.
We're all being played. Everything's become a scam.
Yeah. And I do think, if we didn't have all those negative connotations to marriage, I think marriage is a good thing.
It's a great thing.
Yeah.
I recommend it. Even though I haven't done it, I'd like to.
I mean, my parents have been married, but my parents have been married my whole life and everything like that.
It's the normal thing to do.
Yeah.
Right?
It's pair bonding.
Yeah.
It's pair bonding. You make a life and stuff. And I think, now I feel like that has been sort of put into a lane of like, and I don't think, now this is, I've talked to Rollo enough. I hang out with Rollo all the time. So we talk all the time about this and stuff like that. Now Rollo gives these amazing sort of things where this is what it is, this is the theory behind it, but you have to decide what you want to implement in your own life, which I think is extremely responsible, because there's people on YouTube that say, no, you have to do this, you have to do that, and and largely the red pill for the most part kind of thinks is like marriage is kind of like basically you're a fucking dum-dum.
Well, you might be today, because the system is totally against you.
Rigged, yes.
It's totally rigged. The minute you get married, your wife, if you're the man, right, is being fed and pumped with ideas of discontent, and you're both being pumped with that stuff, right?
Yeah, no,
so
of course.
The whole culture is not supporting your marriage.
Correct.
Number one. And if you have to end the marriage, the legal system is going to destroy you.
Yes.
Okay? It's going to absolutely destroy you. There's a whole cottage industry built around it of destroying you. Yeah. And so read that book by a woman, by the way. I can't think of her name, called Men on Strike.
Right.
Whether you're a man or a woman, you got to read that book, because it just shows a sad commentary on our society. But let's go back to Edward Bernays for just a moment. Sure. And I know we probably got to wrap up here, but you call the time.
No, of
but
course.
Edward Bernays, his first famous campaign was this. It was during a parade. I don't know if it was like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade or whatever. It was a big parade. Parades used to be a big deal. And he basically arranged a bunch of women to be in the parade. And the problem he was solving was that the tobacco companies weren't selling cigarettes to women, because it was socially unacceptable for women to smoke. It was cool for men to get lung cancer and smoke, but not cool for women.
Yeah. These bitches need to get cancer.
Yeah, that's right. And so the tobacco industry was missing half their market, right? Just like the consumer products industry, just like the 2 coffee makers, the 2 refrigerators,
was this in the 50s?
Yeah, no, it's 20s. This was
the 1920s.
The 20s.
God,
yes,
these fuckers are based.
Edward Bernays was the founder of modern PR, okay? And basically what he did is he gave all the women cigarettes, and he said at a certain time during the parade, you're going to pull out the cigarettes and smoke them. And before that, he set up the news releases to the media, and he said the women are smoking torches of freedom. Yeah, that was what he
Feminism,
called
baby.
Torches of freedom were the cigarettes, right?
Yeah.
And so they were smoking them, and that was women asserting their independence, so they could get lung cancer too.
Right.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
That's the founder of modern public relations.
I have never heard that before, and that's insane. So I mean, it makes sense. I mean, he was basically doing pre-social media, basically. Like everyone's eyes are on attention on this. Well, all the cool people are doing it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's smart and stuff.
Torches of freedom. Who doesn't want to be a free, independent woman?
Can you think of any black and white movie that didn't have cigarettes in it? I mean,
yeah, no, I know.
I mean, it's so I found out
product placement.
Product placement. Yeah, Men's on Strike was made by who was it?
Helen something.
Helen Smith.
Okay.
Helen Smith. Yeah. So go check that out.
Great book.
Yeah, no, if she smokes, she pokes. Shout out to Kevin C.
Yeah.
But
so this is how base our culture's become, right?
Right.
Is this kind of thing, and this is all just promoted by the media. Look at the song lyrics of modern music, especially hip hop and rap. It's just disgusting. I mean, it really is. Compare that to the song lyrics of the singer-songwriters in the 1970s.
Right.
And you just see how they I remember having an argument with my girlfriend about this. Not an argument, but we were just discussing it at the time, And she said, well, if people wanted that kind of music, people would be writing it and it would be on the radio. And I said, no, it's not. It doesn't work that way. It's who gets capital.
Right.
Who gets funded? Which band gets a contract?
Who gets put on?
The band promoting these base, disgusting lyrics that preach, sexual promiscuity, infidelity,
reckless spending,
reckless everything. Yeah. Oh, that's another. They write in the song lyrics. Yeah, I'm a baller and whatever.
Rolly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Tons
Consumerism, all that stuff, right? The companies make money from this, and the government makes money from it. And think about this too. If you want to tame a population, and you're the government, and you don't want the population to get too discontent and rise up against the government, as they have throughout history, and revolutions happen, and that's all good because it's a form of creative destruction. You destroy a bad government, you bring in a better one. That's what that's the birth of the United States right there. Okay, and if you're a family and a couple, and you're more likely to be strong in your beliefs. Because you're going to have an internal support system. Your spouse is going to support you, and you're going to support them.
Yes.
And that family bond is going to make that unit strong. But if you're single and need help and government assistance,
right.
Young single women are notoriously liberal.
Yes.
They're not conservative hardly ever,
no.
right? And so, they want the socialism, they want the big state, they want the nanny state.
Daddy government.
Yeah.
Daddy government.
Daddy government, exactly. Right. And so it's all just, it's so obvious when you start to see it.
Unpack it. It's been a plan forever and stuff. Yeah,
and it's working, sadly.
The whole red pill is basically just a jerk reaction to basically what's going on, and then it all came from a natural thing. Is just guys trying to get laid, and then from there we uncovered this it's like we opened a door. It's we're trying to figure out how to get laid better. Then we opened the door and we're like, holy shit! We found this basically this giant conspiracy in this rabbit hole in this industrial complex to fuck up not just the U.S. economy, but fuck up the world economies and stuff, and enslave everybody. And we're just a bunch of dudes just trying to get laid. We open the door and we find this giant, we found the secret door to what's going on in the world. Holy crap, man! If
you want to enslave a population, destroy the family unit.
Yes,
that's a very powerful way to do it.
Definitely, man. And it's even and I hear this all the time about a lot of the Middle Eastern countries and stuff like that in terms of they're the most base and stuff like that. It's just because they're behind on the times. Yeah. There's actually shit going down. Before, they didn't even let women drive, and now they're starting to let women. It's starting to creep up even on them. Yeah. They're 30, 40 years behind.
That should have been done a long time ago. Women can drive.
Well, women can drive. Well, I don't know, sir. Yeah. I don't know. This is God's planet. No,
that's ridiculous. And it's so funny because the liberal left supports the ideology that abuses women, abuses gays, and they're supposed to be so woke.
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense. It's so hypocritical. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But definitely. But where can people follow you, man?
Well, I guess the message of this show, we got off on a lot of tangents and went down a lot of rabbit holes. But look, get your money right.
Yes.
Okay. Get your money right so that you are less susceptible to being the victim of the corporatocracy, of the government, there's an old saying, if you don't have a plan, you're going to fit into somebody else's plan.
Yeah.
Okay? And so get your money right and get these beliefs right. Talk about this stuff. Start spreading this stuff. Spread it on social media. Don't just have vacuous conversations about partying. There's way more to life than that. Our freedoms are under attack. Yes. Our liberty, our money, it's just under attack at every level. And so, Twitter, Jason Hartman ROI. My main website is jasonhartman.com. But, my podcast and YouTube channel, they're still there. Because these platforms are obviously controlled by all the people we're talking about.
Right.
You can find the Creating Wealth Show is my most popular podcast. I have many of them, but just look up Jason Hartman wherever you get a podcast or on YouTube.
He's not hard to find, ladies and gentlemen. He's not hard to find.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. And my next stream, we will see if it's tomorrow. We might have an AMA, but thank you guys for joining us and stuff. And then, can't wait to do another show, man.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Happy investing to you and your audience. Yeah.
Definitely, man. Buy crypto, buy real estate, you guys.